Hi, this is Rock. We're going to take a quick look at using the name manager to define some variables. We've used name manager back in the video where we talked about lambda function. And I mentioned it when I was talking about let, that there are different places to define variables. So one of those is the name manager. One of those is in a let function. So what we're going to do is look at the version where we take what we already have built in the let function and define these variables instead in the name manager. We'll take two examples, diff and previous record. So let's start with previous record. Instead of having this in the let function, I'm going to just delete it from here, and I'll pause this formula here a second. By the way, if this happens when you hit enter or tab out of a let function or any other function that you have paused by putting an apostrophe in front of the equal sign, if that happens, just right click and do the row height for 14.5 or whatever it is that you're using, and it'll put it back. Because the default is, if it thinks it's text, it wants to wrap the text. You can unwrap it by clicking the wrap text icon, but next time you do it again, it'll reset it again. But if you have set the row height to a particular height, like 15 or 14.5, it won't override that again. All right, go to the name manager, and when you open this up, you can define a new variable. And let's call this previous record. And I'm going to give the reference for it, which is previous record here. One of the differences with the let function versus the name manager is the scope. You see here, it automatically put sheet 1 exclamation point as a prefix to the reference, whereas when I did it in the let function, it just had M8 through M35. It also made it an absolute reference, each of which I'm fine with. As I say OK, this defines that variable previous record. In here, you can also see what the scope is of the variable that you've just defined. This has been defined to a scope of this workbook. You can also define your variables to work for all of Excel. I'm going to go ahead and close this and come back to my let function. And here, when I take off the apostrophe, you'll see that previous record is now a color, just like some of these other colored ranges, because it is defined in the name manager. So now if I hit enter, it goes ahead and executes the calculation because it knows this definition, even though I didn't define it in the let function, because it's already defined in the name manager. We can do the same thing for diff. If I take this out, and I'll want to pause so that this doesn't error out. I'm just going to pause that there. Go to my name manager, do a new, call it diff, come here and select the difference there, say OK. Now I have two variables named in the name manager. If I click close, I come back to my let function, take off the apostrophe in front of the equal sign. Now diff is also a color, and if I hit enter, it uses that as the input for the variable. So some of the benefits of having a definition in the name manager includes that I can double click on this and it shows me what it is. It shows me a preview here in the hypertext, which can be very handy because I can also select this and it shows me a preview of the calculation of difference divided by previous record. As you're building complex formulas, these previews can be very helpful to help you see where there are errors in your calculations. So obviously this is working. Name Manager is a great place to define variables. My recommendation is that if it's something you're going to be using a lot, go ahead and put it in the name manager. So that is name manager. Next, we're going to look at mmult, which multiplies arrays. See you there.